Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Underrated Movie Podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss films that are underrated, underappreciated, and ones that have gone under the radar and passed most people by. I am your host, Derek McDuff, and today I'm joined by somebody who we've been talking about having him on for a while, and the schedule's finally lined up. He's an actor, he's a journalist, he's a friend of mine. We've been on the stage together at a few panels. That would be my buddy Law Sharma. How's it going, Law?
Going so well. I can't believe this is literally years in the making. Like I've known you like 3-4 years now at this point.
Something like that.
It's
Yeah,
gotta
yeah,
be. It's getting deep. And so ever since we met, this has been a discussion. So I'm so stoked that I'm finally here, dude.
yeah. Yeah, I'm glad. There's been many, like drinks after, like, at Comic Con or whatever. Like, oh right, okay, well let's
Mhm.
schedule something. We'll get it on the books. And this time we finally got it happening. So yes, like I said, years in the making, and we're here finally talking about it. And before we get into it, we're going to be talking about Mickey 17, which I'm excited to talk about. But I mentioned you're an actor, you're a journalist. Anything else you wanted to let listeners know about yourself? I'm sure a lot of people know about you already, but for those few who don't, what do you want to tell them?
Oh, yeah. Well, hello, everyone who doesn't know me. My name is Law Sharma. I also go by Lawrence Sharma. That's my legal name, but Law sounds cooler. Yeah, like Derek said, I'm an actor. I'm an entertainment journalist. I freelance, so you've probably seen me report for places like AMC Theaters or comicbook.com, Hollywood First Look. I like to stay busy. I like to make film as well. Like I'm just as creative brained as they make them these days. And I like to yap. I like to talk about movies. So like this seems like a great fit for us to talk about a
Mhm.
really underrated film, in my opinion. I was pretty disappointed with how it performed at the box office and seeing people's opinions on it because I love Mickey 17. So I'm really excited to be here and talk about it. But also, as I was thinking about this, Derek, I was like, dude, there's so many films I'm just like, this is underrated too. This is underrated too. So like I know it took forever for us to get to this point, but we might have to meet up again for another title.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. There's a lot to be mined with this subject. So that's why I'm glad I could keep this show going on for a very long time. But yes,
It's a
there,
great
there's
concept. I'm happy to be here.
thanks. Yeah, but there was a few titles we threw out, but this is the one we ultimately landed on. Like I said, Mickey
Yes.
17, which is came out last year, 2025, directed by Bong Joon Ho, his follow up to the film that won him Best Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Film, the Academy
Yeah.
Awards. Parasite. Was his next movie, of course, based on the novel Mickey 7 by Edward
Yes,
Ashton,
sir.
and the film stars Robert Pattinson, Naomi Aki, Stephen Yeun, and Robert Pattinson. Because for some reason, 2025 was really big with like dual roles. You had this, you had Sinners,
Yeah.
you had the
Yeah.
Dylan O'Brien twinless movie. There was a lot of stuff coming out.
Predator
Uh,
Badlands as well.
yeah,
Like
that's
Elle
another one.
Fanning
Yeah.
does double duty there.
Hmm.
I also just saw in like the new Hunger Games movie, McKenna Grace is playing a twin. And like I'm
Oh,
just like,
okay.
oh, is this just what we're doing right now? Is dual roles for everyone? But
I
but
guess so.
hey, I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
complain.
yeah. I mean, the more Robert Pattinson, the better. I think.
Yes, I agree. I agree big time with that. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. But like you said, this is underperformed at the box office, which is a real big bummer. This is Bong Joon Ho is interesting because he kind of goes back and forth between movies that he makes in Korea and then movies that he kind of
Mhm.
co-produces with Hollywood that are made with mostly American slash I guess British actors that are in English. And so this one he
Yeah.
came back to the States. It's kind of always like one back and forth, one of each. So this following up Parasite, I think he kind of had a little bit more carte blanche with this one, but there was some delays. It was delayed about a year all told. It didn't do what it was expected financially. I don't know.
Yeah.
What did you think about this movie, and what were your thoughts about it when it first came out and now?
Yeah, I have to say that I am speaking from a place of bias. Like Bong Joon-ho, one of the first movies I saw of his was back in like 2006, 2007, I saw The Host for the first time,
Mm.
which was like one of my favorite monster movies. It was like really, really important to me to see it back then because, like I think South Korean cinema in general is made with such a precision and care and like authorship from all the directors. Like it just felt super unique. And so I really love like his creature feature stuff. Like obviously stuff like Snowpiercer comes to mind. Parasite blew everyone away. So I was really excited for Mickey 17, having no concept of what it was going to be about. I didn't read the book or anything. And as far as like what I thought about the movie is that I loved how weird it was. I felt like the weirdness was the deliciousness of it, And obviously Bong Joon Ho is one of those filmmakers who is not super subtle about like the the
Yeah.
messages that he's trying to send. Like it's worn on its sleeve, and I think that's one of the things I love about this film is that it is about classism. It's about how like the upper class will use and abuse the lower class, and I also just am such a big fan of Robert Pattinson, and seeing him do a silly little voice in any film is something that brings me joy. And we got a couple silly voices out of this one. But then, the whole cast is amazing. Mark Ruffalo's take is absolutely insane for the congressman. Naomi Aki is super charming. Like I could not find anything I hated about the film. I do think runtime it felt a little long in parts, but
Mhm.
but I loved it, and I was actually genuinely shocked when critics started saying it was mid or like it was fine. I was just like, what? Like this was really interesting to me. It was really sci-fi. Tonally, I loved kind of how we jumped from serious to fun, but I understand how it could also be jarring. But I did not expect it to not make its money back or like break even. That's a tough call given the delays,
Mhm.
but I thought more people would love it.
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, it did have a pretty high break even. Part of it is because of those delays. But it also
Yeah.
just, because it is a big budget sci fi movie, I feel like this does happen a lot when you have a director get more mainstream success. That Not that he wasn't
Hmm.
successful before, but he won Best Picture. And this is, interestingly enough, very similar to a situation that happened with a film I covered relatively recently. Because I talked about Nightmare Alley, which obviously was Del Toro's first film after he won Best Picture. And it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, all right, we're letting the auteur cook now. And this movie, he had final cut. I think that was a sticking point with the studio was like they wanted to, I think, cut it down a little bit, rework things, and he was very staunch, like, no, I have my vision. This is the movie I want to make, and for better or worse, and I think mostly for better, it worked out really well. You get a
Yeah.
weird, as you said, movie, and a movie that is just doing all this weird stuff, but doing it in a way that feels like it is commenting on the real world. I love whenever director Bong is like, I'm gonna take this weird sci-fi concept. The world is frozen. We're all living on a train. Whatever it might be. Here's a kaiju, and it's like, here's whatever, and it's like, oh well, it's always about capitalism, right? That's kind of like what all of his films boil down to. And
It's
Parasite,
always about capitalism.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. All of his films, right? Very much kind of you get the core theme. Okja, like another one. But
Hmm.
Parasite, I think, is one of the few that is not a kind of genre commentary on it. It's a more straightforward.
Totally.
It does kind of have some, twisty stuff in there, like some mystery little stuff. But this is like, hey, we are going to an alien planet with like aliens and clones and all these high sci-fi concepts. And I love whenever a movie can take a weird, interesting sci-fi concept. In this case, that teleporter paradox, which is apparently why he originally wrote the book Mickey 7, was kind of like to explore that. So you take that and you explore, well, how does this sci-fi concept relate to people in the real world? You have these
Mhm.
expendables, and that's just kind of like the working class. There's these people that are just seen as essentially throwaway by people. Mickey keeps dying. Nobody really cares about him. Even his friend doesn't care about him. Naomi Aki does, but the
Mhm.
system really doesn't. And how when they first meet this like other alien force, they just kind of view them as hostile immediately, or trying to shoot them. And I think it works really well. The only thing that doesn't necessarily work as well for me is when it's like a little bit one-to-one, when I'm like, Mark Ruffalo's supporters like wearing red hats. I'm like, that's a little bit on the nose. But mostly I think it does a good job of translating something that is happening, these struggles that people have to go through in the real world, into a more fanciful kind of story.
Yeah, I do agree with that, because I remember being in the theater watching it for the first time and like looking at my friend and being like, is Ruffalo playing who I think he's
Yeah,
playing?
because he's kind of doing just like, he's not doing the voice, but like Shane Gillis is like, anybody can do that impression. You just gotta hit the cadences, because he'll be like, "This magnificent rock," and you're like, okay, like, go on, sorry.
Yeah. And like, no, like I think that's like what I mean also, is like a great example of like, he's not subtle, right? Like he could have delivered that maybe with a little bit more nuance, but I think that was the point, is that it is wacky and it is in your face. And yeah, I don't know, like I do love this movie for what it stands for, but I also think that maybe people found it to be too preachy, or maybe the timing of it coming out in theaters was tough. But like, I can't speak to why people didn't buy tickets, but essentially it is interesting to me that you have this huge star in Robert Pattinson, who is not he's not necessarily the only draw to the box office, but it was the biggest draw that this movie had, I think. I think Bong Joon Ho is an Oscar winner, like Parasite was huge. But if we're talking about like a follow-up, this is a really, really big kind of jump away from what people know him for from Parasite. Like, if Parasite was your first Bong Joon Ho movie, you saw him win on that statue, and then you watch Mickey 17, you're gonna be like, what the hell? But
Yeah.
what I like about Mickey 17 is almost like an amalgamation of all of the weird concepts that he's done, and on top of like the political commentary, on top of like societal commentary. It fits into Mickey 17, and he gets to have some fun in like a sci-fi space. And I personally loved seeing that, because it did feel like bits and pieces of all the other films I've seen of him in one, and Robert Pattinson's in it. So that was kind of my like walk away from it.
Yeah, no, and I think they're a really good match, because I think Pattinson and Bong Joon-ho have the same kind of weird dude sensibilities, where they're like, I've got this crazy idea, let me try it out. Like you said, Pattinson is doing not one but two weird guy voices, and like, in reading some of the stuff about how he prepped for this, some stuff that inspired him, I guess, were Ace Ventura, Steve-O from Jackass, and then Ren and Stimpy to be the two different characters. And I love how Mickey 17 and Mickey 18, they do a couple things where like, oh, you can tell who's who at any particular, like one's got his burn and one's got, like, they put but like, you don't even need that, because while is the same character, he's different versions. You can always tell if he's 17 or 18 based on the personality that he's bringing. And I love that's a weird little quirk of the cloning process, is that every clone kind of has their own distinct style. Like, 18 is like really intense, or I love that bit where like Aki said, like, there's that running thing where it's just like, oh, be whatever one it was, like 3 or whatever, like act like this old clone.
Yeah.
So there's all these like little hints that certain clones have acted in certain ways, and 17 is a more kind of meek, like, all right, here we go. And seeing the two of them play off each other is really great. I think you really need to do that when you have a movie where a character is playing two people, especially when they might be so similar. Like we said, Michael B. Jordan, all those other actors did a really good job of that in some recent films that we've seen. So I think he did a good job of that, and really meshed well with the weirdo sensibilities of Bong Joon-ho, because I think if somebody else makes this movie, it's kind of disaster, because the plot of this thing is just like all over. It's like breakneck, just like all these weird concepts constantly getting introduced. You barely have a chance to like reckon with like, okay, what does it mean to be a multiple? Like, you get a bunch of exposition, then you have that like weirdest three-way ever scene, and then it's just like right into like an assassination attempt. Like, they are just pedal to the metal. And I think that might have been part of the reason that some of the execs wanted to change up the pacing of this
Mm,
thing. But I think because he's such a weird guy and the actor in it is so weird, it kind of lends itself to this strange feeling that you're feeling throughout. Maybe that is part of what hurt it at the box office, but I think it is to the
mhm.
movie's benefit ultimately.
Yeah, I had heard like one of the criticisms was that like the movie plays like three episodes of the start of a series or
Hmm.
something, and I was like, I can see that because it does feel a little episodic. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like it does feel a little disjointed in the same way that you described. But I didn't mind that because to me that was refreshing to not like know or anticipate what's coming next. And the story just got wackier and wackier for me, especially when 18 gets introduced and then
Hmm.
you're just like, "Oh, here's our conflict." Because like Mickey 11, I think it was before, obviously we see like multiple deaths, but
Hmm.
like he is that meek version. And then 17 it just kind of takes on that meek version with a little bit of bravery obviously mixed
Hmm.
in as the story progresses. But yeah, I just like love all those little choices that they made just like in the design of the characters, and then even the voice alone shows like a I think a level of like conscious effort on like Pattinson's side to like
Hmm.
be like, "Hey, Bong Joon Ho, I want to try this like weird Pittsburghy accent, even though we're like stuck in the future, like
Yeah.
whatever it is." And like I did get to interview Bong Joon Ho for this movie, which is like crazy to say out loud, actually.
That's pretty
But
cool.
he,
Yeah, yeah.
but he, but he was saying like, yeah, Robert was just like trying stuff, and he had to like pull the reins back a little bit, but what he settled on just made the character more charming. Like I genuinely was rooting for both Mickey 17 and 18 as like we hit that like third act and we get introduced to the creepers, which is a whole other element of the movie where it's like, what the hell are these monsters? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
On top of all the political stuff, like we're doing like environmental awareness or like, you know like we got to share the planet, like we
Hmm.
got to take care of each other. Like there's so much in here, and maybe it's just suited for a brain with ADHD like myself, but it just scratched the itch so perfectly for me.
Yeah, like I said, I think that it's interesting because when I was watching this, I was almost thinking like this could have been like not that I dislike it as a movie, but I was like it could have been a really great miniseries or something, And obviously,
It could
I,
have
I think
totally.
has Bong done a miniseries before? Am I thinking of Park Chan Wook with Stoker?
Um,
Um,
I don't even know if he was involved with the Snowpiercer TV
oh right, yeah,
series. I
and
would have
it
to
was
look
Park
that
Chan Wook
up.
I was thinking of, but yeah, but yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know how much he had to do with the Snowpiercer show, but I think it could have worked because there is a lot that gets introduced to it, and a lot of stuff that just kind of happens where it's like, oh, there's this mob boss that's after them, and he somehow has sent an
Yeah.
assassin, and then that just kind of it gets wrapped up at the denouement where he's like, and then he tried to kill Steven Yeun and he threw him in a thing, and it's like, don't worry about it. But it does, like you say, it is that ADHD kind of brain where it's like, and this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, and it's so
Yeah.
bizarre and off the wall, and it feels like just because of Pattinson's narration, it kind of feels like your friend who's telling you a story, and they're telling you
Mm.
all of these details, and it's just like, and then the creeper, because it feels like this movie has a lot on its mind and a lot to say, and I did feel the lengths a little bit, but I was like, it almost could have been longer. I almost could have given a little bit some of those plots a little bit more time to breathe because I love all the stuff that all the machinations that are happening at the end, where Pattinson's 17 and 18 are going onto the planet and they're kind of trying to communicate with the creepers and there's a lot going on, but you kind of miss some of those side characters. You kind of miss what's happening with Steven
Mhm.
Yeun, and then was it Val, the kind of faux love interest that
The
he
cool
Kai.
brunette girl.
Kai,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Kai, who's just like, there was a moment where you're like, oh, are they gonna like become like, is like one of them gonna go off with
Yeah.
Kai? But then I love that she's like, has that, like, there's that hint that she was kind of in love with their coworker that got killed by the falling ice, and then she has that
Mhm.
kind of like, you see at the end she's got her romance, so I'm just like, all right, we love a bi queen, good for you. But there's so much going on that you almost want more. I don't know, did you feel that at
Yeah.
all?
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And I almost think that's why there's that extended like dream sequence or like look into
Yeah.
the futures. Because part of me was genuinely believes that they had the intention of maybe Bong wouldn't have been the one in charge, but like it almost felt like they wanted to set up to continue telling the story. Like I guess the next Mickey 7 book is like him finding like an antimatter bomb or something like that. Like, and
Yeah.
so part of me is just wondering, it's like, oh, did they have plans to like kind of tie up those loose ends down the road? That said, I didn't feel the length the whole time, but when there were moments that dragged, I really felt like the momentum kind of shift. And maybe that's because I wasn't like on board necessarily when it was jumping from time to time. But you're absolutely right. Some of those side characters, like Steven Yeun's character, he has that whole like he's got a drug problem. They were in the macaron business at the beginning of the movie. I'm like, I you kind of want to know more about like
Hmm.
what they actually think of each other because there he became an expendable, right?
Hmm.
Mickey signed up to be an expendable, but with the movie when it opens up, it's like it's really dismissive from Steven's character. He's
Hmm.
like it's just part of the job for them now, and I just would love to see kind of like the lifestyle and the choices that got them to this like place of like almost apathy
Hmm.
for life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that said, yes, I definitely think it could have been longer, and that's why like I don't disagree that it could have been like a great mini series. Like imagine
Hmm.
4 hour plus long episodes just telling this story. It would
Hmm.
have been great, but the problem is they had to fit as much as they could into a reasonable show runtime,
Hmm.
and 2 hours and 19 minutes for anyone is already a struggle. So I may is it if this is the best version that they could give us, then I understand like where the challenges may have been. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. It's just like, yeah, give me more of this. Like I wouldn't mind an extension in some way of learning like what happens next, because it almost ends at a place where it's like, oh, this is like a brand new beginning to a brand
Mm.
new story. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. No, I would love to see a follow up to this. Some adaptation of the book. I think it's called Antimatter Blues. Would be really interesting.
Yes.
I mean, given like as we talked about the way this movie performed at the box office, that doesn't look like it's gonna happen. But it introduces so many crazy concepts and ideas. It's there's a lot of sci-fi movies that I like that are just weird as shit, where we're like giving you a bunch of
Hmm.
world building, we're giving you all these weird characters, we're giving you all these plots. We got 2 hours, we're gonna do as much as possible, and it leaves you wanting a little bit more. And they're these big swings, and they don't always work out. I think this one worked better than some of them, but some that
Hmm.
reminded me of was like Jupiter Ascending, like Wachowskis. I love that shit. Or like
Mm.
one it really reminded me of was Dune, but the David Lynch version of Dune, where you have this like book that is this kind of like sci-fi thing that is this really heady concept. There's all these weird characters, all this lore you've got to introduce, and you've got to do it in a over just like 2.5 hour runtime. And because he didn't, the new Dune was like, we'll split it up. That Dune was like, do go through that whole book in a movie, and it is just like this one. You are getting a weird dude with a lot of stuff to say, and has a lot of weird metaphors he wants to put into his movie that are sci-fi based in it. So I don't think that old Dune movie is particularly great, but man, it is a fun watch, and I think this is a much better movie, and it is just as much of a fun watch, and I will always appreciate a big swing, and it's just a shame when they don't land at the box office. And I'm glad that
Mhm.
we have recently gotten a movie that is a quote unquote original movie. I know they're both based on books, but I like that Project Hail Mary did very well at the box office. It was
Mhm.
really nice to see that. And I think that hopefully will give, Hollywood, whoever is writing the checks, they can still take chances on your movies like Mickey 17 and stuff, and give your auteur weirdos or whoever wants to adapt these things a real shot.
I was just thinking that because like I heard like a new novel series, or not new novel series, but they're adapting something called Dungeon Crawler
Oh yeah,
Carl.
yeah, yeah, yeah. People love that
and
one.
like and like yeah, and people, there's already like a built-in fandom, and like Project
Hmm.
Hail Mary is one of those things where I felt like so many people, that's their favorite book, not
Hmm.
favorite Andy Weir novel, that's their favorite novel, period.
Hmm.
Mickey 17, or Mickey 7, I guess in this case, I
Hmm.
didn't know anything about it like
Yeah.
until these names were attached to it. So it was almost like it was up against its own battle and being an adaptation that maybe some people thought was like its own IP. I don't think it was marketed super well either. It was kind of just
No.
like, there's two Robert Pattinsons in here and he dies a bunch. And you know what's funny is like the dying part of it is the least important part of the
Right.
story.
It's
The
it's
fact that
literally the exposition. That's it. It's
it's a
the setup.
montage.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really not about that he's going into situations and then dying and you see
Hmm.
that. It's like and that was like the most of the marketing. And so I think that's also what maybe helped me feel more surprised by it, is being like, oh, this is like such a such a commentary on, like you said, capitalism, on like classism, like even the way that they designed the ship. I loved, like the barracks themselves were like Naomi Aki and Mickey stay, or like these, it's almost like prison like, right? The cafeteria
Hmm.
feels very prison like a Black Mirror episode. And then you get into, Kenneth and what is a Tony Collette character?
Yila.
There you
Yifa?
go.
Yeah.
Ela.
Yila, thank
Ifa,
you.
yeah. Those two, like when you're in their quarters, it's like this extravagance, it's wealth, right? And like I
Hmm.
love that within the ship itself, they take these like these design points to kind of, I don't know, give us a little taste of like what sci-fi looks in Bong Joon Ho's world. You know what I mean? Like the lab itself is very different than where they stay, was very different than where the wealthy people keep their stuff. Like they're in pajamas while they're like announcing that they're landing on the planet. The ship is shaking and it's just like this fun juxtaposition. And I love that from like a visual perspective. That's the kind of stuff that I eat up. It shows me that there's like care and attention to detail in those big auteur swings, right? Where it's like, yeah, we're telling this big sci-fi story, and that requires like just like informed things about the world. Yes, there's a lot of exposition, but it's also what your eye is telling you, is like that subtext that you need to kind of just like stay along with the themes of it. I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling here, but like I just did appreciate kind of that it was familiar in this sci-fi space, but it was different because there was a little bit of creature feature in there. There's a little bit of like, there's a lot of comedy actually. As I thought it was very funny, and then it gets like cool and violent and actiony. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
we're kind of jumping genres, we're blending them, and like I said, it's just kind of like a sampler platter of Bong Joon Ho,
Yeah.
I personally, and that's what I subscribe to in this one, is that it is him just doing his thing, and I don't know how much the studio was like, pulling him back or whatever, and I would love to see his original version
Hmm.
before like there was like discussions for reshoots and stuff. But at the end of the day, I still enjoyed what we got, and like the world that was built. And I'm curious about the future of these characters too, because those were not like small things that they introduced at the end, like
Hmm.
not Nasha. Sorry, you got to do it like him, but like
Hmm.
she's like a leader of some point in the future. Like there's
Yeah.
I don't know. I have more questions now, because I fell in love with the people that they showed us in this. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I love a lot of the stuff you said about the revolution and the world building and that stuff
Mhm.
that Bong Joon Ho is always so good at. Much like Snowpiercer, it's like when you have the haves and the have-nots, and the have-nots are like eating these little gray things, and Robert Pattinson at one point like takes one little extra gray cube, and then these alarms all sound. And meanwhile, you have the president or whatever like living in the lap of luxury and just like in this like
Mhm.
gold-plated thing, and he invites him up to Mickey 17 up to like, oh, have some dinner with me. It's eating this like just this raw, gross looking thing, but it's like it's clearly the greatest thing
Gelatinous
yeah.
cube.
It's the greatest thing he's eaten
Yeah.
in years, and it ends up being poison. And just how does he, dispensable he is? He's just like, all right, well, we're just gonna shoot him in the head. And
Yeah.
that's all really good world building, and then the world building on the planet I think is all really well done, where you have these creatures, the creepers, which are really I think well designed, where they can look horrifying, but they can also be like really cute at the same time. They're almost like these kind of like sort of like roly polies, but they feel like they harken back to a lot of classic tremors or sandworms or these, but they also have their own distinct vibe and feel. So I think that all that world building, all that creation lends itself really well to the themes and the messages that he's trying to get across about the environment, about the economy and capitalism and all this stuff. And I think this movie, had it come out in when it was supposed to in March 2024 as opposed to March of 2025, I feel like we might have been more hopeful, right? We might have been like, okay, cool, like, and when I saw this, I was like, man, I'm a little bit like, I was a bit of a downer watching this. I was like, I don't really want to see somebody doing another Trump impression. Like, I just want to go so I think that the timing did screw it up a little bit. I don't even know if it was in terms of box office, although I think that contributed to that, but like in terms of just the vibes people are feeling to the movie. And I think that's why, because it got decent reviews, but like you said, it didn't kill it at the box office. It didn't do as well as a lot of his movies do with critics. I think Parasite has like a 98% in Rotten Tomatoes. This is like a 70-something. So I think that people were feeling a little bit down, and that is a danger of just like these delays. And I guess it was delayed because of SAG, and it was delayed because it got switched with Sinners, and then it was also, I think, just all the behind-the-scenes machinations really just kind of just stalled this thing in its tracks.
Yeah, I think I honestly do believe there's a lot there in terms of like the timing of it all, because that would make sense, right? Where it's just like, oh, we have this idea, it's so fresh, it's gonna hit, and then a year of, despair for not only the nation but the world.
Yeah.
And then we come back to it, and it almost feels like it's in poor taste. Like you're almost like, this, we're talking about this. Like, and that's why I think something like a Project Hail Mary right now is doing so well, is because it's like that feel good kind of movie that just like gives you it's just pure hope. It's pure hope. It's pure love, and then this one is like, we can have some hope if we fight back. Like, it's almost like still a call to action to be like, take down the man, like, and I do think that is a huge element as to why we ended up with what we ended up with as far as like return on investment. But like you said, the world itself is for me worth exploring more. Like, I don't, what did you think of Okja? Let me ask you that first.
So I have to admit, I actually haven't seen Okja. It's the one of his recent movies that I've missed, and I need to watch it. It's like high in my to be watch list. I always feel like a bad cinephile whenever something comes up on the show that I've seen. But I need to watch it. But what do you think of it?
That one is, so I really liked Okja until like the last half of the third act. And the reason is because the messaging to me starts turning a little bit preachy. It starts being a little bit too on the nose with its messaging, and that as an audience member alienates me, because it almost feels like jarring. It was almost like when I watched Wall-E for the first time. I love the message of Wall-E, but when we come down to earth at the end of the movie, and then it starts becoming like, we need to recycle and take care of the planet, I was almost like, no, I'm here for the robots. Like, I understand what we were doing, but like, it was almost like I got whiplash. For this, I feel like what I like about Mickey 17 is that they were able to sprinkle in those elements of the Okja messaging into this movie with the creepers, and like make them both like ferocious but lovable. Like, understanding them is a kind of a big theme in this one, right? Like, in this world, like the creepers are the expendables to humans, right? And Mickey understands that, and I love that there's that genuine connection. But at the same time, I could have interpreted this movie and its messages as less preachy because I was like prepared for that
Mhm.
from Bong Joon Ho.
Yeah.
But like Parasite was so brilliantly made and grounded, and then this is just so wacky. And like I love the analogy that you made to the David Lynch Dune, because there are definitely elements of just like, yeah, these characters could just like plop right in, or like you could take one of them and put them
Mhm.
into the Mickey 17 world, because that is like the level of camp and like what's the word I'm looking for? It's just like flabbergasting. Like I was watching it and just being like, wow, look at how they throw the bodies away. Oh, look at what they're sending him to do. Just inhale a virus in a
Yeah.
brand new planet's atmosphere. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
it's it was just like I think like if I ever make a feature film, I would want it to have like all of these different kind of levels of like watchability, whether that's
Mhm.
like because you think it's funny, or because you like the messaging, or because the acting is just solid, but like it may have just been too much to for like a consumer audience, and maybe Warner Brothers knew that as it was kind of coming together, and that's why they tried to make it work. But it ultimately, like, the marketing didn't do it justice, and then people who saw it, like, there weren't a lot of people who saw it and came out and were like, there wasn't like a ton of good word of mouth, because I don't think anyone really paid to go see it in theaters. And I remember it kind of just came and went. And for a movie that I really liked and that I had covered for work, I was just like, wow, that really didn't like cause a splash anywhere. Like no one cares about Mickey 17. And so I don't know. I personally continue to be shocked by like dismissal of it, because I do think it's, at the end of the day, maybe it's not perfect 10 out of 10 film,
Mhm.
but it is better than a lot of movies that did get that kind of spotlight. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
underrated, in other words.
Yes, good way to put it. Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think that they did really drop the ball with the marketing, because it's like I remember they were like playing Sinatra and stuff like that, and it's like, all right, are you trying to
Yeah.
market this to like sci-fi fans, or are you trying to market this to fans of Parasite? And I think that I remember my co-host of the other podcast I do, Midnight Film Society, Damien, was like talking about it. He was like, "Oh yeah, this is one of my most anticipated movies of 2024." And then it's like, so even like the film fans were like, "All right, well, I guess they kind of lost interest because it kept getting delayed and everything." But yeah, I'm really
Mm.
glad it exists. And before you leave, I also want to ask you, since you'd said like you did actually have a conversation with Bong Joon Ho about this movie. Is there any insights that you got from that, or anything you talked about with him that you wanted to mention here?
You kind of actually hit on it. Like the one of the first things I asked him was about the voice. I was just
Mm,
like, how did you just like agree to that?" And then it was essentially what you've seen in a lot of interviews now. He's spoken a lot about it, but he was just saying like Rob kept coming with like different pitches, and he would just be like, "I don't know what part of America that's supposed to sound like, but I don't like that. Do
yeah.
something else. Don't do Steve-O from Jackass, please." And so, for him to like to comment on that, he was basically saying it's like basically all Rob. I just gave the nod of approval, and I love that. But I think my favorite bit that I got to talk to him about was the creature design for the creepers, because you have the creepers, you have Okja itself, like the creature Okja, and then if you go all the way back to the movie I had mentioned earlier with the host, they all have something similar about them while all being very different. Like Okja feels like just like a super hippo, but then the creature from the host is like this like lizard fish, like mutated
Hmm.
thing that's like quadpedal, like it's really interesting to me. And then you have the creepers that are these essentially giant like buffalo roly polies, like whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it. And so what I like is that he's been working with the same kind of creature designer since the host. Let me look it up. It's Jang Hee Chul. So he's been collaborating with these monsters in his movies for that long. And so the fact that they have like a shorthand is really fascinating to me, to be like, hey, how do we make these look cuddly and cute, but also like when we first meet them, they should be mad intimidating. And those discussions, like getting to those insights into just like kind of trusting your team. I love that he's just like, I just know that my production designer and my art department is gonna kill it when I give him a concept. And then the other thing that I thought was cool is I asked if the house we saw in the movie was the Parasite house, but it
Yeah,
was just
I
like kind of an Easter egg. Yeah,
yeah.
he was like, no, it's not, but it was intentionally
Mm,
chosen to be very similar. And I think it
yeah.
was kind of like I won an Oscar with that one, remember?
Yeah.
Like,
That's
but
pretty
yeah,
good.
I was just like, was that the freaking house from Parasite? But the answer is no to that.
Okay.
So
Because I
yeah,
was actually
but
wondering
yeah.
that. Like I saw it, I was like looking, and I was like, is it? I was like, it looks like it could be, but it's kind of so. Okay, I'm. See, that's why it's good to have on journalists that ask the hard hitting questions on this show
Yeah.
because we can
Where do you
get.
get that house from? Have I seen that before? That's how I asked it too. You
But
know what
yeah.
I will say? He said my
Mm.
Korean was pretty good. I
Oh,
didn't
okay.
ask questions in Korean, but I
Mhm.
said like my greetings, hello, goodbye.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Your Korean, very good." I was just like, Bong Joon Ho. It was pretty cool for me.
Nice, nice. I mean, impressive. That's a real compliment. Well, with that being said, then let me transition to the last question, which I always like to ask a somewhat related but unrelated question directly to the movie. And with that, are what is because this is obviously from Bong Joon Ho. I'm a big fan of Korean cinema now emerging worldwide. We've also got Park Chan Wook. Are
Yeah,
there any
the
Korean
goat.
films or filmmakers that you wanted to shout out here?
That's so funny. If you, people who are listening can't see it, but on the video feed that Derek and I are on, I have an old boy poster right behind me.
Oh, I couldn't
Park
even see
Chan
that it
Wook.
was Old Boy. Okay, that's
Yeah,
cool.
it's kind of dark. Park Chan Wook is the goat, man. Like I don't know if you saw No Other Choice this last year, but it is absolutely fantastic. Like the way that he uses mirrors, the composition, the way the camera moves, and also just who how he gets performances out of his actors, man. Like and if I have to say, the impossible question is like, what is your favorite movie of all time? And like by default, and it's really hard to like explain this because it's kind of a messed up movie. It is Old Boy, like the
Okay,
South Korean
nice.
Old Boy from what was it, 2003 or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
It
2003.
made me want to be a filmmaker, even though
Cool.
it like messed up with my head a little bit. Like I was
Yeah.
just like, wow, movies can be this like nuanced or interesting or dark, and on top of like all of the elements of like the drama of it all, it's just like got such crispy action, and like when it gets violent, it like really is impactful, you know what I mean? And that is something that has carried on in his like sensibility, and like I promise you guys, you will not feel bad about trying to find No Other Choice and watching it, because like I literally saw a billboard for it today and I was just like, wow, I got to rewatch that movie because
Yeah.
it's just him in top form, man. And like Bong Joon Ho is also like, one of the goats for me. For me, I think one of my favorite movies of his might be Snowpiercer, just the way that
Love
impacted
Snowpiercer.
me. But like even like Korean television shows, and I'm not just talking about like K dramas, but there's a superhero show that came out a couple years ago called Moving, that was based on like a webtoon comic, and it's freaking sick, dude. Like
Nice.
the media that's coming out of South Korea is absolutely insane. I can't wait for to start Beef season 2 that just came out on Netflix,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
I know that like Hee Sung Jin had like, he had help from Bong Joon Ho. He had help from Park Chan Wook. So it's like I want to see how that all like culminates, because apparently this is kind of like a ramble as well. But like Bong Joon Ho was on set as he was doing an episode, and he came up to the monitor and he asked him. He's like, "Sonny, do you actually want to frame it like this?" And he's just like, "Whatever you think."
Yeah.
Director Bong, whatever you think. And so there are scenes in Beef season 2 that I need to look out for and be like, what looks like Bong Joon Ho to me versus,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
Sunny Lee. But yeah, I legitimately think the care and like production quality out there is absolutely just stunning because you know we get a lot of streamer content. Not even I won't even call them like you know
Yeah.
like full on media or anything because some of it just feels like flat and like we're getting a lot of like those verticals and stuff. The lighting is not good, and so when you see a movie that does take into account like all those little details, production design, how they want to shoot it, how they want to move the camera, who they want to cast, I just it's like pinnacle filmmaking. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I love our filmmakers out here, but South Korea has been crushing for a long time.
Yeah, they really have. You know, also want to shout out, you know, the last film before No Other Choice that
Mm.
Park Chan Wook did, which was
Oh
Decision to
yes.
Leave. Oh my god, I love Decision to Leave. Like such a great twisty noir messed up movie. Like I cannot get enough of that thing. But yeah, it's I have been really getting into Korean cinema recently and Korean inspired. It's like
Mhm.
obviously, you know, K-pop Demon Hunters, which I know is like an American production, but still very Korean inspired. Korean, you know, filmmakers
Yeah.
worked on it. Like stuff like that is just sweeping the world. And I think, you know, these two guys, you know, are like just some like we're so lucky that we're now living in an era of cinema where it is easy to see movies from around the world, and I
Yeah.
love that, you know, for the first time ever we had a foreign filmmaker to America win Best Picture. You know, like that's a huge achievement. So you know, good for Bong. And
Absolutely.
I'm glad that we're gonna get a lot more of this in the future. But yeah, man, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this really great underrated movie with me. Before you go, where can people find more of your stuff?
Oh yeah, totally. I'm so like I said, yeah, I freelance, so you might catch me on some random outlet, but you can find everything that I do or just me in general. It's like kind of like my living portfolio everywhere. It's at Law, the letter J, Sharma, Law J Sharma. That's TikTok, that's Instagram, that's X, if you want to call it that. I barely use that. On Threads though. I've been getting on Threads a
All
little bit
right,
more,
yeah,
but
that's good.
yeah, yeah. But that's me. Follow me if you want like insight into kind of what I do for a living with the entertainment journalism stuff, with acting, filmmaking, and just like general shits and giggles, to be honest.
Yeah, it's because it's
But
funny
yeah,
because you know I'll be scrolling on like TikTok or Instagram or something. I'm like, oh, cool. Here's like an interview with Ryan Gosling and Sandra Hüller, and I'll just reverse shot and I'll see you. I'm like, hey, there's so it's always like a good, nice moment. Or you know, I have Stubbs holder and I see like an AMC thing come up. I'm like, there he is again. So you know, out there doing the work, man, and it's good stuff. So everybody definitely check all that out. And if you want to hear more of my stuff, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I do another show called Midnight Film Society, where we just talk about kind of more recently released things. We talk about what we've been watching, recent film trends, all that stuff. You can also check out my Patreon, patreon.com/underratedmoviepodcast, where I have a bonus podcast, new one every year. This year is Amadeus, where I'm looking at Amadeus in 15-minute chunks. So that's been really fun. And then and then whenever there's a new Marvel movie, I talk about that over on Infinity Stones and Dragon Bones. You can find all of that and more on underratedmoviepodcast.com or underrated movie podcast on all of the socials. But yeah, thanks guys for taking a listen and spend some time with me in law. I'll see y'all next time.